Hey guys, can you hear me out? Hey there, AMD 15. How are you, man? Awesome, awesome. So, welcome to today's stream. I know it's been a while. I wanted to do this, but I had to figure out the technical details on how to do it. But luckily, I finally managed to do everything and we're good to go. I'm good, man. How about you? Hi, Diana. How are you? Good to see you. Okay, so I will just wait for a couple of more people to join and then we will get started. So tell me, guys, is there anything specific that you would like me to talk about today? Well, thank you for coming, Diana. Okay, Trias and BTC. BTC will be the first thing we discuss today. And sure, I will go through Trias later on because BTC is the most important thing right now. So we need to know the next steps going forward because if BTC is going bullish, then the whole market is moving along with it. Yep, that's correct. Good morning to you. Everybody is wondering where BTC is heading. So this is actually what we'll be discussing today. What I can tell you so far, we'll discuss it more in details, of course, but what I can tell you that the chart is not yet decided. So I'll break down the full picture today and we'll go through the whole details from the higher time frame to the lower time frame and see what are the next possible steps. And we'll discuss together where are the points that we should be looking for to confirm if we're going to go bullish next or if we're going to go bearish. It's very important that we always stay open for possibilities because bias is your worst enemy in the market. So if you have a bias towards a certain direction, it will be often the reason that will get you wrecked. And this is something I don't think any one of you guys would want to go through. Hey Richard, how are you, man? I hope there is no delay with the sound. So I'm just trying to reply as soon as I see your messages, but I'm not sure if it's coming on time or not. Hey Bashar, how are you? I'm good, good man. Glad to see you here today. Okay, great, Dan. I'm glad it seems timely. So I actually posted a poll at the chat section. So please, guys, go ahead and vote because I was not sure at what time should I be doing this stream. So this is my first stream, and I know there's a lot of people who follow me from different places. So there are people from Australia, from Asia, Europe, Northern America, South America, and they're all different time zones. So I want to find the best time that suits at least the majority of you guys, because I'm sure not everyone will be able to make it on time, but a good time that will suit all of you guys so I could make my future streams on that time slot. Sorry. All right. I think we're good to go. Let me share my screen with you guys. Okay, can you guys all see the chart? Yep. Okay, perfect. Okay, so Bitcoin. Bitcoin is the most important thing that we need to be looking at right now. So if you have been following me for a while, you would probably know that my view of the bigger picture of Bitcoin have not changed yet. So basically what I believe is we are having a five structure with two complicated corrections for Bitcoin. So the first corrective phase has been here around this area. And the second corrective phase is what we're going through right now. This is it. Assuming that it has not finished, I tend to believe that the current correction has ended here. So let's break this down. The initial correction of Bitcoin has started here and it has formed what I believe to be a three-wave corrective structure. This is one, and this is two, and this is three. We call this in the wave theory language, we call this a regular flat, and it's a corrective pattern. Now, the second one is the one that's going on right now, which is also 1, 2, and 3, assuming that this structure has ended here at this point. Now, once this correction is complete, okay, we are supposed to get one more impulse to the upside that should complete the overall Bitcoin structure. So the overall structure, the five-wave structure that I'm talking about, is technically going to look like this. Let's take this out. So this will be the first wave, this will be the second wave, this is the third, this is the fourth that we are going through right now, and this would be number 5. Now, I've been following with all the different theories and all the different analysts that are in the market, and I've seen a lot of opinions suggesting that Bitcoin has reached its all-time high right here at this point on November of last year when it hit like around 69,000. So a lot of people have suggested that this was the end and we're going to start a long-term correction. Now, I personally tend to disagree with this theory because of a couple of reasons that I'm going to explain to you right now. So in general, my view of this is that Bitcoin has not reached its all-time high yet, and we still have more upside to go. And let me explain this. So, as you guys remember in the beginning, I said that the initial corrective phase was around this point here. Now, if we assume that Bitcoin has reached its all-time at this point, and the structure has started here. So if we assume that this five-wave structure has ended here, so the structure is going to look like this. This will be the first impulse of the structure. This will be the first correction, second impulse, second correction, and the third impulse and the last one. Now, my problem with this scenario is the following. If that's the kind of structure that we're having, and Bitcoin has reached its all-time high at this point, it means that this is the second correction. Here is the problem with this. If we compare this correction here to the first correction, we'll clearly see a lot of differences. First of all, the first correction is a complicated correction which includes 1, 2, and 3 waves inside of it. While if this is the correction, it's just a single impulse to the downside. It's not even corrective in its nature, similar to what we had at this point here. So the nature of this piece is concerning. That's my first concern. The second problem, if we take a look at the length of the first correction from its beginning to its end, it was about 270 days. While the second one, if we consider this as a correction, this was about days from its beginning to its end, from its all-time high to its all-time low. Now that can't happen in structures like these because these corrections usually are a mirror of each other. They don't necessarily have to 100% copy the exact same pattern, but at least in terms of the structure and the duration of each one of these corrections, they should be somehow similar. So that's my second disagreement on the theory that says that Bitcoin has reached its all-time here at this point. Now, the third one and the most important one, if we take a look at the MACD, let me make this a full screen again. So, take a look at the structure from its beginning. So this was the first impulse, and this was the second impulse. So while the price was trending up, we were forming higher highs and higher lows. Take a look at MACD and you'll see that MACD also was forming higher highs. This means that we don't have divergence in this structure. And usually this is a sign that we are going to get a fifth wave on the structure. Now, if MACD here was forming a lower high, if this high here was lower than the previous one, I would tell you that, yeah, we could say that this structure has probably reached its end around this point here, and we shall be heading down. But that's not the case. MACD did not form any divergence. And this is usually the difference between the 5-wave and the 3-wave structure. So if we had a 3-wave structure that had an impulse correction and an impulse, you would look at MACD down there and you will see that it has formed a high, and then the second high, while the price formed a higher high here and here, MACD formed a lower high. So this was going down and this was going up. This means that the momentum is fading and the price most likely will be dropping from this point down. But this is not the case here. Let's take this out. Sorry guys, I'm not looking at the comments. Am I talking too fast? Are you all with me? Okay, good. Now, in this 5-wave structure, usually what happens is that we get the initial impulse, and then we get the first correction, and then we get the second impulse. Now, right when we break this high here, at this point, we can tell if we're going to get a 5th wave in this structure, which means we'll get another correction and then a third impulse, or if it has ended here by looking at the MACD. And in our case here, the MACD has formed the first high, and when the price formed another higher high, MACD went to form also another higher high. Now, if the scenario was not like this, if we saw MACD coming to form a lower high, just like this, you see, both are in the opposite direction. This is going down and this is going up. This means that the buying power is weakening and the momentum has faded. So the buyers are not interested anymore in buying this specific asset. And this would suggest in 90% of the cases that we will have a drop here. So this is not the case for Bitcoin, as you guys can see. So for these 3 reasons, I do believe that the structure which we are having is still a 5-wave structure that includes 2 corrections and 3 impulses, and we have more upside to go from here. Is it clear so far to you guys? Does anyone have any question about this? Okay, great. Okay, just let me know at any given point if I was going a little bit too fast, because sometimes I get a little bit excited and I go into the zone, so I totally forget that there are people following. Sorry, guys. Okay, so going back to the structure. So we have an agreement, an initial agreement, that the structure which we're having right now is a 5-wave structure. Okay, so we do have an initial agreement that this is a 5-wave structure. Now, everything was going well. The problem right now is in this second correction here. And let's zoom in. This is the weekly chart. I will go to the daily chart and let me explain this in more details. Sorry. So this correction, the second correction of the structure, has started right here at this point. Now, in order for us to consider this 3-wave correction or the second corrective phase of the bigger 5-wave structure, so this was the first one, this is the second one. In order for us to consider this one as a complete structure, we need to look at these 3 waves and say that all of them are already complete. Now, wave 1 and wave 2 are already complete. We know that for sure, and I'll explain to you why. And based on this explanation, I will tell you why wave 3 is not yet confirmed that it's a complete wave. So usually, if you've been following any of my YouTube videos, you would see that I usually set 2 conditions in order to confirm that a certain trend have been complete. So once we reached the initial all-time high here, this was the all-time high. But once we got to this point and the price started trending down, as soon as we start forming lower lows in the opposite direction, what I usually do is that I draw a trend line. So in order for us to confirm that this piece here was complete, we need to see the price doing two things. First, we need to see the price breaking this trend line. And the second thing, we need to see the price forming highs and lows in the opposite direction of this trend. So this trend here was down, which means we were forming, this was the highest point, this was a low, this was a lower high, lower low, lower high, and lower low. So this was the trend direction. Now, as soon as we had this initial run here, first we have formed a higher low. So this is the first low in the opposite direction of the trend that we were forming. And the price went all the way to this point here. Let me show you exactly. So this point was higher than the last high which we had, which means we have already formed the low and the high in the opposite direction. That's 50% of the confirmation. So at this point here, we are 50% confirmed that this piece has ended. But we needed another condition, which was breaking the trend line itself. So what price did here, it came for an initial test of the trend line. It was rejected, and then it went again for another breakout. So as soon as we broke above this trend line, at this point here, this exact candle, which was on the 6th of August, that's one day after my birthday. So as soon as we broke this specific level here, this was the point where we confirmed that the initial wave of this correction was complete. Now the same thing goes to the second part, and that will be faster because I'm sure you already get it now. So this was the trend line of the second piece. First we broke the trend line, and these were the, okay, this was the low, the high, higher low, higher high. So as soon as the price came in and broke below these highs and lows in the opposite direction, we also confirmed that this was complete. Now here, if we go back in time, I was a little bit hopeful that the correction was going to end at this point here. So this was the higher low and this was the higher high. So we needed to break below this. I was hopeful here because this correction in its nature, it was pretty similar to what we had here at this point. Let me draw the support zone and take a look at this. So once we were trending up here, the price came and broke out above this zone and came for a retest. The same thing has happened here at this point. So we broke above this zone and we came for a retest. Then we went all the way to form a new high. The same thing happened here. And then we came back in a 5-wave structure. So this was the initial one. And look at the similarity between both structures. So we had a consolidation at this point. We had a similar consolidation on a smaller scale. Then we had up and down to form a lower low, and we had the same thing, up and down to form a lower low. And then we went up, we came back to form the initial lower high, and then we continued. So at this point here, I was very hopeful that the correction has ended. The price went up and came back here, and I was thinking that at some point here, we would shoot. But unfortunately, that was not the case at all. But look at the similarity between both patterns. Anyways, so the second, going back to the second piece, so we have broke the trend line, and as soon as we broke this support zone, which I just told you about, as soon as we went below this, we broke the last low of the previous piece, so we went in the opposite direction. And at this point here, this second piece was considered complete. The reason I'm telling you all this is to get to this last part where we stand today. Now, let's apply both of the conditions on this last piece, similar to what we have done with the second and the first piece. So this was our trend line. And as you can see, the trend line, the first condition was fulfilled here at this point. So this was broken, and this was 50% of the confirmation. Now, what needed to happen next is that we needed to form highs and lows in the opposite direction. And that's exactly what hasn't happened yet. So as soon as the price broke, it came back for a retest of the trend line, which is pretty normal. And then we went up again and we got rejected here. Now, it's important to mention that what we're dealing with at this point where we got rejected 3 times is a very strong resistance. So this zone was retested multiple times. See, here, here, at this point, at this point. This was a rejection. This was a rejection. So you see how many times we got rejected. So this is a very strong resistance zone. If you are following me on Twitter, I said once we had the initial attempt and once we had the second attempt is that I can't celebrate that Bitcoin is already in a new uptrend unless we close at 46,000, around this level here. Now, the reason I'm explaining this to you because if you apply both conditions on the third piece of the structure, so the first condition was breaking the trend line, which already happened on the 5th of February. The second condition, forming highs and lows in the opposite direction, was supposed to be fulfilled as soon as we break this level here. But this has not happened yet. And that's why, until this point, Bitcoin is still undecided. Are you guys still with me? Yes, Diana, I can go through Telcoin later. What do you think about its future? Yes. Okay. Yep. Okay, great. So let's look at the possibilities that we are facing next for Bitcoin based on what we have just discussed. So the first thing that needs to happen, if we are going to continue an uptrend at this point here, we need to see a very strong price action at this point that should go and break this support level and form a new higher high. And it can't be just any kind of price action. It has to be very impulsive. For example, similar to what we had at this point here. And I'll explain to you later why. So if we take this piece here and plot it here, we need to see something similar to this. Unless this happens at this point where we stand today, I can't say that we have resumed the uptrend yet. Now, the reason behind this, if we see the price going in any different formation, in any different kind of structure, for example, if it goes in a corrective pattern like this and then comes down and then it goes in a corrective pattern, even if it breaks, we're still in a dangerous zone because this corrective structure in its in its entirety here, the corrective structure is not a good sign for a further uptrend, because this would be more like forming a flag so that we drop further to the downside. And when I say the downside, we still are not talking about a long-term bear market, because even if we drop, we still have few support zones that we are going to talk about. But this is the initial scenario that I need to see. We need to see a big price action at this point that should come and break the previous highs and break this support zone. Now, this could possibly happen at any given moment, because while we tend to think that Bitcoin is decoupled from the other markets and it's decoupled from the geopolitical situation, or in other words, the news, you would always see that the news and whatever is happening in the world always keeps impacting Bitcoin. So the recent situation in between Russia and Ukraine has impacted the price. If this wasn't happening, we would most likely see it in an uptrend right now, and we'll be on our way to form a new all-time high. So because of that, if we hear any fundamental news that is going to have its impact on the market in the coming days, that could give us this kind of move that we're looking for. And interestingly enough, I've been looking at other markets because I've been trying to see the correlation between Bitcoin and other markets. So I was looking at the US 500, S&P 500. And see what's going on. S&P 500 is also impacted by the situation that's going on right now, but as it seems, it's about to reach an exhaustion point, which means that as soon as we see the price oversold, we're going to see a bounce from this point onwards. Now, it depends on what kind of momentum we're going to have. If it was impulsive enough, then we will most likely see Bitcoin jump with it. So we'll see this kind of move that I told you about for Bitcoin. And it's for some weird reason, but always these technical and fundamental factors, they tend to align with each other. Now, that's why a few days ago I said I can tell what are the fundamentals of certain projects by looking at the technical side of it, and the same way vice versa. If you look at the fundamental side of certain projects, you can tell what technically is going on. So expect to hear some kind of news. I'm not an insider. I'm not telling you that something is going to happen. I don't know anything. But I expect to hear some kind of news in the coming days. Could be a peace agreement or anything like that, that would most likely give us this kind of movement. So if we go to a lower time frame, and that's the 4 hours, as it is right now, we could possibly get this price action today, tomorrow, or the day after if this condition is fulfilled, which is breaking this zone over here. Let me change that to red because this is a resistance zone. Still trying to catch up with everything. Okay. So look at this zone where the price is right now. It was rejected yesterday and it seems to be rejected today. So this was tested multiple times here. At this point, if we can argue that it was tested here. If we extend the resistance zone further here as well. And I think we have the same thing on the other side. Yep, here. So this is the most recent high that we had, which we need to break, and it happened frequently. So this is how you usually tell a good or a bad support and resistance zone. So you need to see some kind of frequency in them. They need to be tested multiple times throughout their history, and they need to be also recent. And that's exactly what we have here. So recently we had the last test here, and there was some kind of frequency around this same resistance zone. So on the micro picture, on the 4-hour chart, we need to break this one first. So if we see the price breaking above it and maybe coming back for a small retest and then going up, this will be, no, that's not working. So coming back for a retest and then going up here, this will be a very good sign. So we need to look for something similar. Now, if this doesn't happen and we see the price rejected at this point, we'll probably go towards these previous lows here. Now, this will be our last chance to take off from here. If we get rejected and go towards these previous lows, towards this level here, let's put this in green because it's a support area. This will be our last chance, or we could even go further towards this area and form what we call a double bottom pattern, which is usually a reversal pattern. So if we get rejected and go towards these lows, this will be our last chance to take off and go from here. So two scenarios we have so far. On the micro chart, we'll either break this level and continue going to retest the next resistance level, and maybe we will break it up and continue from here and get the kind of bullish movement that I explained to you about. But if that doesn't happen, the second scenario is that we get rejected here and fall towards these previous levels. Now, if this happens, this will be our last chance to have an uptrend. Because you remember what I told you earlier about having the kind of corrective movement. If this extends further and goes up and down, even if it goes up, but if it goes in a corrective way, this will not be an impulse to the upside. The price would be forming a flag, some kind of flag for a further downtrend. So it will be going down and up and down and up until it gets at some point here, and then it will drop. That's very dangerous. But this is still early to discuss, at least not today. I'm just telling you about the possibilities. And remember, guys, this is the most important thing. You need to be open for possibilities. Bias is your biggest enemy. Okay, so these are the two scenarios that we're looking at. If we end up going with the first scenario, we will need to see a breakout on the higher time frame. So if this resistance area is broken and we end up going to retest the next level, because if we break this, this is the next logical resistance that we're facing. So if we end up going up to retest this level here, we will have to break it. Because if we don't, Bitcoin is pretty much doomed. If we don't break this level, if we end up going up and we don't break it, pretty much doomed. Now we can see, like, there are so many scenarios that we could see around this point. We could see some a small rejection first and a breakout. That's a possibility. We could see a breakout and then some consolidation above this area and then another breakout. Or we can just go straight, shoot straight, and then come back for a retest and then continue going up. But the worst scenario of all, if we get rejected and we get a lot of selling pressure here, the price is going down. But hopefully that's not what we're going to see. So the most key point for Bitcoin is going to be this one, for upside. No matter what happens in between, we could have a lot of possibilities. We could have a million different scenarios. We could go up and then go down and then have different kind of patterns. There is a lot of possibilities that could happen. But the most important two levels are going to be this one at 46,000 to decide if we're going bullish or bearish. Anything above 46 is going to be a new bull run. A rejection from there and then falling towards the lower levels is most likely going to be bearish. But that does not necessarily mean the end of the show, because we still have, let's go to the weekly chart. Because we still have this support level here. So this is the 46,000 resistance area. So if for some reason we get rejected here, we'd most likely go towards these levels. But here we would still have a chance to continue going up if that happens. I would only be concerned if we break below this level. But that's a discussion for another time. Let's take it one at a time. So these are the two most important levels to look for now. The 46,000 and the lower lows in case we get rejected tonight around the 4 hours resistance zone that we are facing right now, this one. So tonight, this decision has to be made. We'll either break here and go towards the higher levels, or we'll get rejected and go towards the lower levels. And I explained to you what each one of the scenarios is holding. So this is all I have for Bitcoin. What do you guys think? Do you agree or disagree? Give me some inputs. Okay, great. AMD 15 agrees. So what's the likelihood wave 4 or wave 5 of Elliott? Are we in wave 4? And on what time frame? Okay, so you need to differentiate between two things here. Now, once I discuss the possibilities here, I'm talking about the smaller time frames around this area. So this is more like the temporary scenarios. Now, a lot of things could happen around here. As I said earlier, we could go up, we could drop down, we could even break this and then go up again. There are so many possibilities. But this, let me just change the color. But no matter what happens around this area here, this does not change the bigger picture. The bigger picture, I'm talking about the five-wave structure. The only time where I would tell you that the five-wave structure is not in play anymore is as soon as I see a close for the price below 28,000. That's the only time where I would tell you guys I was wrong. This scenario was completely mistaken, and Bitcoin is not doing a five-way structure. It's only when we break below this last low here, because that will be the first lower low on the weekly chart, and that would announce the bear market. But I am telling you, based on logic and based on experience, I don't see this happening. Until this point, we are still having these three, and we are in the middle of wave 4 of the bigger structure. Now, so we should expect wave 5. Now, a lot of action could happen in here. We could see further down and then up, or we could see sideways consolidation and then further down and then up, or we could break up and then come down a little bit and then go up. There's a lot of action that could happen in between. But as long as we are not breaking below 28,000, I would not change my view on this structure, because this is, until this day, everything says that this is a five-way structure. And we should at least come and break the 69,000, the all-time high that we have formed. Now, the time frame could vary, of course. No one can ever tell you how long is this going to take. It could be a week or it could be a few months. In either way, we should still expect a fifth wave to the upside. We must have... Okay, so any more questions on Bitcoin? Yes, I agree, AMD. We should have a fifth wave on the overall structure. Okay, good question. Target of wave 5. Okay. I was hoping for someone to ask that. You know what? I'm not going to do this here. Let's go to... I don't know how many of you guys use this website, Look into Bitcoin. Now, this has a lot of helpful information related to Bitcoin charts. So we have market cycle charts, if you guys don't use it, and we have on-chain charts, and we have also charts related to the address balance chart. So how many Bitcoin wallets do we have that have more than 1 BTC or more than 100 BTC or 10 BTC or even 1,000? Now, before I tell you about the target, I want to show you this chart here, because I was looking at it yesterday and something very interesting came on my way. Look at this. So the blue line is a representation of the Bitcoin price. And the orange line is a representation of the number of wallets that are holding over 1,000 Bitcoin. So when we talk 1,000 Bitcoins, we are talking about, how much is it in today's price? We're talking about 38 million. Yep, 38 million. So these are wallets that are holding over $38 million. Look at this spike in price here. I don't know if I can make this bigger. Not sure. So this was on February 20th till this date. So the number of Bitcoin wallets that are holding more than 1,000 Bitcoin suddenly jumped from 2,116 all the way to 2,264. That's about 150 addresses who acquired over 1,000 Bitcoins. Let me do a quick calculation. So 150 times, okay, let's say on average, each one has only 1,000 Bitcoins. So times 38 million each. That's $5.7 billion in a couple of days. This is the kind of purchase that you see from big investors only. Could be banks, could be governments. This is definitely not an action that you would see from retail investors. Of course, if this chart is accurate, I don't know, this could be a glitch. But if this is accurate, this is a kind of price action that you would see from really big investors. So if we assume that banks or big corporates or some governments are entering into Bitcoin and buying these massive amounts, then they're probably doing this for a reason. Something must be cooking right now, and we will see the results of that soon if this chart is accurate. Anyways, let's go back to the targets. You asked me about the targets. So this chart here, where is it? The Bitcoin logarithmic growth curves. Now these exist on the trading view chart, but they are not as clear as this one. So I will add this to my previous analysis as another justification why Bitcoin did not end the cycle yet. So if you haven't seen this chart before, this is a representation of the price action inside these logarithmic growth curves of Bitcoin since it was invented. This is back in 2010. So as you can see, in every cycle, the price goes to the top of these logarithmic bands. The cycle is mature every time the price hits the top orange band. And then we reach the new all-time high, all-time low every time the price goes towards the lower side of these bands. Now, this has been repeated in all the different cycles. So the first cycle was the 2011 cycle. The other all-time high was in 2013. This was the last cycle in 2017. How many of you, by the way, guys, were there in the crypto, like were investing in the crypto back in 2017 cycle? I was there 2 years earlier. Like I got exposed to cryptocurrency 2 years earlier. But how many of you were there around that time and made money? Okay, I guess no one. Okay, so going back to the chart. So as you can see, every time we hit the all-time high was around the orange upper band. Now look at the current cycle. The current cycle started here by the end of December, beginning of January of 2019 and the end of December of 2018. So at that time, this was the time where the price hit the lower orange band after reaching its all-time high in 2017. Now we came for another retest at this drop here. If I show you the chart, this drop over here, this is right when COVID started. So this was the first one and this was the second one. But if you take a look at the all-time highs that we have already formed, none of those have already tested the upper orange bands. So if we assume that the next Bitcoin all-time high is going to be around the orange band, and if we assume that we have already completed the correction that we just spoke about, and we shall be on our way up from today onwards to the end of the cycle, as of as it stands today, it's about 180,000 once we hit the highest point of the orange bands. Now, this of course depends on how long does it take Bitcoin, how much time will it take it from this point towards the orange bands. So if let's say if it takes from now till May, for example, that's going to be about 172,000. If it goes further than this, in June, that's going to be about 182,000. And the more time we take to get to that point, the higher the target becomes. And this is exactly what you need to follow in order to forecast what's the next possible all-time high for Bitcoin. I hope this answers your question. About last night, I was aware of it, but I wasn't in it. That's shame, man. Diana, you're a new player. Well, coming late better than never arriving at all, right? I don't know if that's the quote or not. But yeah, there is a lot of money to be made in the cryptocurrency market. So, yep. Okay, so any other questions about Bitcoin before moving on? Now, meanwhile, guys, while I'm waiting for your question, please do me a favor and hit the like button if you haven't done that yet, and share the stream to social media so we can get to as many people as possible. I would really appreciate that. This happens to be the thing that helps the most with the YouTube algorithm. So I appreciate you guys, clicking the like button and sharing the stream so we can get to as many people as possible. Brother, please tell something about Bloktopia. Okay, remind me in a few minutes, I'll look into it. Do you think Russian war will pull BTC down? I don't know. That's subject to what's going to happen. I mean, it all depends on the results. Like few days ago, if you take a look at the Bitcoin chart, do you remember when we got a bit hopeful? Yeah. This part here, when we had these big couple of candles over 2 days, this was when the news was saying that there are peace talks that are being held between the two parties. And this was when we saw this massive increase in price here. But I mean, what happens from this point onwards actually depends on how the outcome of the conflict is going to be. So you need to watch for the news. Okay, so what probability would you give wave 5 before the 28K being breached, which would... Well, I prefer not to jump there. I really don't want to jump into probabilities. I am still bullish on Bitcoin going and breaking these highs. But I'm also keeping my mind open for possibilities. I don't want to have bias, I always keep talking about this. It's very dangerous to have bias in the market. Once you have bias, you would most often lose money. So just keep an open mind for what's going to happen. I already gave you earlier the levels that you should be looking for in order to confirm either one of the scenarios, the bullish or the bearish one. So let's watch, see what's going to play next, and just go along with it. At the end of the day, it's not healthy to try to predict the market and try to be the next genius who's gonna guess what's gonna happen next. But it's better if you just let it do its work and just play along. That's actually what's gonna get you better positions. Also, I think you said a weekly close, right? I'm not sure I understand. Please elaborate. Okay, so I'm going to move to some questions and answers. What do you guys want me to look at? Do you have any specific cryptocurrencies of interest that you want me to look at? And please give me something that exists in the charts. Because there are a lot of cryptocurrencies that are not there on TradingView. Okay, so many requests. Bloktopia, Trias. Okay, let's start. I think I have Trias on my watch list. There it is. Who's asking about Trias? GT, did you watch my video a few days ago about Trias? Okay, so if you have watched my video, nothing much have changed since then. Look at the daily chart. So I actually set two scenarios for Trias. And apparently we're still playing with the second scenario. So I said back then that this here is a 5-wave structure. The first correction. No, this was okay. Let me fix this. Let's start from beginning. So the first correction was this 5-wave structure. And I said that the second correction, the second piece of the correction, now the overall pattern is a correction, but the second piece is also a 5-wave structure. And I said back then when the price was here, I think it was around 23rd of February, I said that we are in the last piece of this 5-wave structure. But this last piece is not necessarily to be yet complete. So we are at the very last stages of this one. We could extend much further, but the good thing is, if you look at the weekly chart, take a look at this. The price is already very exhausted on the oscillator. We have been oversold for about, how many weeks now? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is week number 6. We have been oversold for about 6 weeks. So we can't stay inside this for much longer. So we should expect, and as you can see, because we are oversold, the movement is becoming smaller and smaller. The candles are becoming smaller week after week. The only thing that's pushing the price down now is that the overall market is going bearish. Other than this, as soon as the market starts changing its circumstances, I expect that you would see a sudden jump for Trias. It's like suddenly you'll see a big engulfing candle, similar to this one or to this one. You'll see a very big candle. So we're about to end this bearish movement. But also, as I'm telling you, this is subject to the market circumstances. Now, the worst case scenario that you could think of here is this. The worst case scenario could be coming towards these previous lows and maybe breaking them by a little bit. This could happen. But again, this is subject to the overall market. Like as it stands right now, if we start moving up from here, that will be totally valid. We will have no reason at all not to move from this point onwards because the overall correction is complete. This is a running flat. This is, by the way, is a corrective pattern name that includes 3 waves inside of it. And as you can see, each one of these 3 waves is broken into smaller pieces. This one, as I told you, has 5 waves in it. This one has 5. And the center piece has 3 pieces in it. So as it stands today, this one is complete. We could be moving any moment. But of course, that's subject to the market circumstances. The market needs to move first. So as soon as Bitcoin starts moving, if we get this breakout that we spoke about earlier, you will see Trias shooting because there is nothing else holding the price. Now, if I'm looking at other cryptocurrencies, I could tell you like, yeah, the pattern is incomplete. We have a little bit more to go on this structure. But when we look at Trias, this is a complete structure. And the overall pattern, once all of these are complete, it should be like this. So this was the initial impulse. This is the correction. And we should get another impulse to break the previous all-time high at this point. We should get this kind of movement. And we are ready to move. But that's subject to the market circumstances. As it stands right now, it has everything it needs to move up. But the market, the bearish momentum is holding it back. Last week candle was ugly. You mean Trias? Yeah, this is not such a great candle. But still, we can see a really good movement here. I mean, it depends on how this weekly candle is going to end. And remember, this part here is very important. Where did the other... Okay. This part here is very important. We have been oversold for about 6 weeks. Usually, cryptos should not stay this much in the oversold zone. Okay, so let's move to Cryptopia. What was the code of Cryptopia? What are your micro targets for wave 3 and 5? Which wave 3 and 5 AMD? Which wave 3 and 5 are you talking about? I'll look at Bloktopia and tell me which ones. Okay. I haven't looked at this one in a while. Oh. Let me just take a look at CoinMarketCap because the chart is not so clear on TradingView. Interesting. 200 billion, 8.034 billion. Ouch. the charts. Okay, now before getting into the chart, I would be very careful with coins who have a small amount of their circulating supply, of their overall supply in circulation. Because let's say if Bloktopia at any given point now, I'm not gonna tell you if they release half of their supply. If they release another 8.3 billion coins, the price is gonna tank. It's gonna fall down badly. But assuming that the circulating supply is going to stay the same, there is not much in this structure here. I am unable to tell you exactly how is this going to play out. Now, from looking at the coin market cap, we have an initial impulse and we have been in a corrective pattern for a while. And this could go for a very long time. Now, the good thing is that we are oversold on the weekly chart. But if I break it down, on the weekly chart, on the daily chart, now see, this is a problem with most of the new cryptocurrencies. We don't have much history to rely on. Like, I'm trying to find any specific support areas that could be holding the price right now, and we have nothing, zero. It's desert. Like, there's nothing at all that I could count on. Now, one good sign here is that the price have been exhausted for a while. So we have been entering the oversold area over and over. So we have entered it once, twice, thrice, four, 5 times so far on the daily chart. 5 times. By the way, how many exchanges does this one exist on? I mean, it's in a decent number of exchanges and it has decent volume as well. I don't understand why it keeps on going down. At least it should hold its ground. So, but the good sign is that we have been oversold for multiple times in a row. The same way on the weekly chart as well. Now, this is one of those coins that you could see it suddenly if the market moves, of course. Remember, everything is following Bitcoin. We have a lot of different structures and different coins will be moving in different ways. But each one of them has a certain characteristic, but at the end of the day, they all should follow Bitcoin. So assuming that Bitcoin is starting to follow its bullish momentum, this is one of the coins where you could suddenly see a candle like this one, where you could suddenly see this kind of price action. You could see it like, boom, shoot right away, all the way to the top. Okay, it shows. So this is one of the coins where you suddenly can see it shooting. Similar to, I think I've seen something similar to that. It was SLP, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, this. Okay, so SLP, look at this move. It's very similar. A long-term downtrend and then sudden move to the upside. Now, as it stands right now, as soon as we break above this one, we could suddenly also see a big one or two candles, sorry, that could break this one, and then you will suddenly see it shooting all the way. So Bloktopia is one of those that could be repeating the same thing, but unfortunately we don't have much history to judge. So everything is right now subject to what Bitcoin is going to do. Okay, what else? I saw someone mentioning Dent, right? Dent. Okay, Dent. Now, few things I can see here. Okay, so the first thing is that this is also a five-wave structure because the same reasons, we don't have divergence between the first and the second impulses. So ideally, what we should expect once this correction is complete, a further upside movement. But the question is, this correction here, how long is it going to take in order to be complete? Now, looking at it, the best bet that we could have right now in order to keep moving up further is dropping down further towards this support area and forming a double bottom pattern. That's the best bet. So if we end up going down towards these lows here and form a double bottom pattern, we could expect the price to move from here. And we could say that the overall correction was this 1, 2, and 3 as soon as we got into this area. Now, even a better scenario would be if this goes more sideways and gets towards the trend line here. Now that's a bit more extended, but that's even better because as soon as the price gets to this point, and if that happens, that would be around July, if this happens. So as soon as the price gets towards this point, this is a confluence area. We have two strong support levels that are meeting each other. So it will be very hard for the price to break below these levels. And these are the kind of support areas that you need to look for in order to go through your buy orders. So that's the best scenario you could wish for. However, if this doesn't happen, we could be looking at a three-wave regular flat that looks like this is 1, this is 2, and 3 should go and form even a lower low. And when it gets here, then we can tell if that's going to hold and we should continue up further, or if we may get a fourth and a fifth wave down. That's one scenario. Another scenario, this could be a very complicated correction. Now, this does not happen often in the cryptocurrency, but I mean, it happens in other markets. I mean, if you guys don't know, I trade not only cryptocurrencies, but I come from Forex background, and these are often happening in Forex. I trade stocks as well, in addition to cryptocurrencies. So this is usually a very complicated pattern where it could be this is the very center of the correction, and we should get a further down movement here before completing the correction. So the overall ABC is going to be like this. This will be A, and this will be B, and this will be C. So if we take this one out, it could end up something like this. But of course, again, it's subject to what the market is going to do. Now, what you need to look for here in order to confirm either one of these scenarios is simply just the support area here. Let's plot the nothing. There's not even a single Fibonacci retracement that was not broken. Anyways, so this is going to be your best friend, this price level here, around 0.0015. That's about maybe 30 or 35% less than where we stand today. So if you see the price coming towards these levels and then suddenly see a bullish candlestick pattern, then that's the time where maybe you could enter this one. So for example, look at this. I'll give you an example from the chart itself. So you see this small flag here? So, okay. So the price was trending up. It has formed a small flag. We had a doji candle and then followed by an engulfing candle to the upside. I mean, you should read about the candlestick patterns, but this is a bullish buy pattern. So as soon as this happened, another flag, and then we continued going up further from here. So what you need to look for is some price action around this level here, around the support zone itself. So if you see any good candlestick pattern on the weekly chart, that's when you can confirm that we could go bullish from here. However, if we break this level, we could go to either one of the other two scenarios I just told you about. Trias. We just did Trias. What's your ideal portfolio for this run? Like, you mean if we get the fifth wave for Bitcoin, is that what you're talking about? Well, that actually depends on what kind of trader are you. Now, okay, I would ask you, are you a day trader, a swing trader, or a long-term holder? Which one of those are you? Now, if you're a long-term holder, I mean personally, and that's my personal opinion, if you're a long-term holder, I would say keep the majority of your holdings in the big caps. Majority, when we say majority, we're talking about 50% plus, because you don't care. You just want to hold for the long run, and you just want to keep it there. You don't want to buy fast and sell fast. You just want to let it grow. So you would keep the majority of your portfolio in big caps, and then the other part, the smaller part, in medium caps, and you can keep few in the small to micro caps if you're a long-term holder. This is the best strategy. Because, I know that people like to go for the micro caps. They want to catch the next 100x or even 1000x cryptocurrency, but that's good. And a lot of people have made it. I'm one of them. I mean, I bought coins that did 500 and 600 and even 1000x. But in times like this, once the market is bearish, you are completely destroyed, especially if you don't know when is this going to happen. That's going to totally destroy your portfolio. So if you don't know where are you going to buy and sell, I would say stick with the big caps to more medium caps. GT, could you have a look at Sol? Sol. Is this the one you're talking about, GT? Okay, there it is. 1 second, I don't know what's going on with the stream. Can you guys hear me and see me? People say that it had this bull run already and won't be making new all-time high in this bull run anymore. So just wondering. I've already explained to you what's my view about this whole situation. At the end of the day, there are certain facts that we can't ignore. I mean, in any other traditional market, there is always opportunities. I know this because I do a lot of different markets. Like, I trade a lot of different markets. But in the cryptocurrency specifically, because it's a young market, everything is still following Bitcoin. So as long as we don't have that bullish momentum for Bitcoin and the breakout, as we explained earlier, we are not going to see most of the cryptocurrencies do that, bullish momentum and achieve new all-time highs. I mean, I would be lying to you if I tell you anything else. But my hope is, and the logic and the analysis that I'm following are telling me that we have a very good chance, as I explained to you guys earlier, we have a very good chance of making this work and going for the fifth and the last wave of this structure. So anyways, for Solana, from what I see over here, it's also another 5-wave structure. So, and this is a very typical 5-wave structure, because in 5-wave structures, once you have the impulse, the correction, and then the second impulse, you won't see the second correction going below the top of the first impulse. That's how you define a 5-wave structure. Otherwise, if this happens, it will become a 3-wave structure, and this will be a complicated correction. So This is exactly what we have right here. We had our initial run, and then the first correction ended here. We had the second impulse, and now we're in the second correction. We should get wave number 5. Now, so far the price have not broken below this point. And this is the support that you should be looking for. As long as we are above this point, we could be moving up at any given point here. If Bitcoin breaks above 46,000 tomorrow, Solana will shoot straight. And Solana, by the way, is one of the stronger performers in the market. So once the market turns bullish, you would see it like, performing very well. Look at the previous impulses. Like, it's weeks after weeks of bullish movement. I mean, not even a little bit of correction, except for the first and the second correction. But if you compare it to other pairs, you would see, like, they would go in a small impulse, a pullback, impulse, a pullback, and then so on. And then they would go for a big correction like this one. But that's not the case for Solana. Because it's a strong project. I mean, like, this is the case always with strong projects. They have a lot of holders behind them that are holding for the long run. Their fundamentals are very strong. So you would not often see a lot of crazy price drops as you see. You would not see them like, okay, how much was this on its all-time high? 254, and now we're at 84. That's what, about 60% drop from all-time high? 65% drop. Look at the majority of other smaller altcoins. You'll see that they drop by 95 or even 99% of their all-time high value. So this is how you can differentiate a good and a bad project. So the movement as it stands right now, okay, so let's compare the first and the second correction. Let me move to the daily chart. Okay, so the correction that we had, the pattern, sorry, that we had in the first correction was a 5-wave pattern that we call a contracting flat. This was the initial wave. This was 2, this was 3, this was 4, and this was 5. So the overall pattern lays in between these two lines. This is 1, and this is 2. So once you look at the overall structure, this was the first impulse, this was the first correction, and this was the second impulse. Now, because we had 5 over here, we should likely have 5 here. Now, looking at it as it is right now, we have a correction here in between these two lines, and we do have another correction here. This scenario has about 70% chance, 70 or 80%. So if this is the case, this is also a 5-wave correction where this was number 1, this was number 2, this was 3, this was 4, and we should still get 5 that should break the low. But ideally, if that happens, we should not break below the end of the initial impulse. This was around what, $58. So we should see it breaking the low. So anywhere between 72 and let's say 60 and $70, somewhere between these two. As soon as we break below this, you can look at this correction as it's a complete correction. But let me tell you a small concern of mine here. It's not that these things, they don't happen. They can happen from time to time, but it's not very common. And that's very similar to what we had with Bitcoin. You remember when I explained how the first correction was bigger than the second correction, when I was talking about the argument of other analysts. So here we have the second correction that almost twice in size as the first one. I'm not telling you this does not happen. It happens, I've seen it before, but it's not the most common scenario. So if this is true, then we could be going for a different kind of structure, but let's leave this till it happens. Anyways, here is what you need to be looking for now. Two levels. First, we need to look for a breakout of this previous low. Most likely this is what's going to happen, so that we can complete the 5-wave correction. So we need to look for a breakout. As soon as this breaks out, we need to look for a breakout of the trend line. So we need to start looking for the movement that would come here and break the trend line. If this happens, if we break the trend line, then we need to look for a breakout of the $100 mark, 108. Only here, only at this point, you can confirm that the price is in a new uptrend. But as long as we don't break above this level and break the trend line, you can't confirm a new uptrend for Solana. But from what I can see, I can tell you that we will most likely not go below this one. If we end up going below this level, this end of the initial impulse, then this means the odds went against Bitcoin and we went into a long-term bearish market. So, yeah, this is it. So it was 19. Wow, good for you, man. That was. Are you still holding till this day? So you're probably about what? You got to what, 115 times X at all-time high? That's very good. Do you play that? I do play. I mean, I used to play, not anymore. I have all my guitars, but yeah, I used to play a lot back in the day. Wow, that's amazing, man. I mean, holding from 19 till this day, you should not be worried at all. Even if we go into a very long-term bear market, things should be well for you. You can hold it for the next 5 years with no issues. And I can tell you, Solana is, I mean, you don't need me to tell you this. You already know Solana is a very great and solid project. This is one of the few projects that you would see still standing in the crypto market years from now. Because, I mean, when you look today at a lot of cryptocurrencies, they would eventually be failing. Or even if they don't fail, you will not see the same momentum and hype around them as you have seen. I was looking a few days ago at the chart and I was just recalling the things that I used to trade back in the 2017, 2018 cycle. Like, you don't even hear of them today. Like, for example, Verge. You don't hear anything about it anymore. XRP was king back in 2017. No one even talks about it now. It has a lot of community behind it, but I mean, no price action. It's just still been correcting for what? For almost a year now. Stellar. Stellar was a big hit back in 2017. I remember buying this at 0.0034 cents and selling it at about 90 cents. And like today, it's like it doesn't exist. So, I mean, bottom line, you don't really need to worry about Solana. Solana is a great project, even if you keep it, no matter how low it goes, it eventually will make it and you will see a new all-time high. Okay, I'm about to end this first stream. Let's just take a last look at what XLM and Dash, again, altcoins. Okay, MD, okay, I'm actually at XLM. We have contradicting signals for XLM. On the daily chart, the momentum is fading, so we're in a downtrend. We're forming lower highs and lower lows, but the momentum is fading on the MACD. But on the weekly chart, it's the exact opposite. We still have a lot of selling pressure. So it depends on which scenario is going to play out, on which one of them is going to take over. But if the divergence is correct, you should see as soon as this piece here is complete and this piece, you could look at, we could look at this area here as a potential support. Yep. So this was retested multiple times. It was retested here, here. We can, yeah, here and here. So this is the strongest support that I can see so far. So if we assume that this move here is a third wave of the overall correction, and we assume that there is a divergence, so we could see this end here and then move up. That's one scenario. However, if we actually follow the weekly chart and weekly chart says we don't have any divergence, you would most likely see a rejection here, maybe a little bit of a rally, and then a drop down further from there. So the overall correction will be, this will be the middle of the correction. And we can look at it like this. So at some point here, we can start looking for a new upside. These are the two possible scenarios that I see right now for XLM. So you expect XRP to explode if they win the case. I mean, I don't know. That case has been going for so long. So I'm not sure. Like, let's see if they actually end up. I think they need to start lobbying a little bit more, because that will get people on their side. So let's see what comes out with that one. Okay, guys. So I'm reaching my end here. I thank all of you who showed up today. This was the first stream. I was a little bit messed up because I couldn't work out all the details and I couldn't figure out everything properly, but it worked at least. I hope you enjoyed today's stream and I hope you enjoyed the analysis that I've just given you and you benefited from that. If you enjoyed it, please click the like button, subscribe if you're not yet subscribed, and share the video if you think it was worth sharing. So I think I'll be having more of these streams quite often, as long as we have this bearish momentum with the market. So expect to see me pretty soon. Make sure to follow me on Twitter and Instagram, because I would often post there when I do have streams like this. So thank you guys so much for sticking in with me today. And this was me, King. Until next time, stay safe and see you later.